15 minutes of workplace chatter you want to overhear. Welcome to the Friday 15 with your host Paul Mastrangelo of First Domino Consulting and Jeff Jilton of Spencer Stewart.
Good day, Jeff.
Hey, good Friday, Paul. Here we are once again. What's on your mind?
Good. Good is on my mind. I've
Good.
got a lot of ethical questions, Jeff, that maybe we could work through. And I think it's connected to the business world, but even our society right now. This is a heavy one. Are you ready for this?
Yeah, that's right. All right, bring it on. Bring it on.
As you know, we, in the past week, from when we're recording, we had the situation where Dario Amade from Anthropic was basically saying to the government, we don't want our AI, Claude, we don't want our AI technology to be used under the following circumstances. It can't be used to create basically an automated weapon, and it can't be used to monitor US citizens. And the government said, well, we don't like that agreement. And very quickly, Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, said, well, we will work with you and we will wink. We will make sure that we have some ethical guidelines. And that's a bit harsh. Apparently, they did think that they had some ethical guidelines that were put in there, but yet upon a closer examination, it wasn't really much to stand on. So why am I bringing all this up? I'm intrigued by this, Jeff, because we've got two contractors, right? These are companies that are looking to contract with the government. One of them is saying, we won't go there. We're willing to stop this business because of how we feel is the right or wrong thing to do. We have another company that was saying, well, we are willing to work with you. We're trying to put up some guidelines, but of course, now there's a little bit of back and forth as to what those guidelines are all about, and lawyers will get involved, I'm sure. There's so many ripples for me. Who is the one who has to blow the ethical whistle? But this is a hypothetical. It's not like a case where there's ongoing embezzlement or, we've got Enron and we're just, circling money around to make it look. Nope. This is a potentially unethical scenario in a business environment. And of course, it's got a lot of folks, certainly on social media, saying, well, this company was right, this company was wrong, and we should make decisions about who we spend our money with to support what's ethical. I am really confused by it all, Jeff. What do you got?
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. It's not a simple question. There's a lot to go with. I think one direction to take that is where leadership of these companies are, right? So Dario, I should say, and Sam Altman, right? So it's not to say either one is being necessarily more ethical or more moral than the other. It's just that are they following different standards of ethics, right? Mm-hmm. So you can, ethics is not black and white. Like if it were, it'd be easy, right? But it's not, and so. And even say with OpenAI jumping into this, they weren't coming in and saying, "Oh, it's a free for all." They were coming in and saying, like, "Well, we think we have the guidelines and the gate checks to make this okay." Where Claude, Anthropic did not feel comfortable with that. Which, by the way, they never said they would never get there. oh, we will never do this. They were just saying we're not confident in doing this right now. So it's just sort of interesting that OpenAI jumped in, and now they're still in the same holding pattern because they're really not ready either. So it's a little bit of a bait and switch, but that's probably
no one seems to be on the high horse.
No, there's
it's
no
just how big
super
is your
high
pony?
So the way I kind of look at it is, I think there's there's lenses that we can look at for ethics, right? So there's a utilitarian lens, which is we will, whatever the cost, if the cost outweighs, if the benefits outweigh the cost, it's worth doing, right? And that is, I think, where the U.S. government is at with this, that we have national security to be concerned with. And if there are some risks, but we believe enough in the technology, we really believe enough in how this is going to work, that it's better to move forward and have that security than to wait and create bigger risk as a result of waiting. So they're taking this stance of, I think, a utilitarian perspective. And then I think the other two positions can either be thought of as duty bound, which is like sort of taking things from a deontological perspective, right? There's rules that we need to follow. So there's compliance, and that's a little more like laws and rules and standards that we must apply. And I think that is maybe where we can say Anthropic is coming in. Like, hey, we have certain standards that we need to meet before we feel comfortable moving forward with this. So they're kind of having their own internal compliance check, and therefore not comfortable moving forward. And then maybe the third arm is the virtuous person, right? Which is feeling like they're doing the right thing. And so maybe that's where Sam Altman is coming in and trying to be the virtuous hero to save the day, which is, hey, I have the technology. I think we have this worked out and we can do the good for everyone. I think I know what's good and what's right, and this will work. And I'm not going to create harm in doing it, right? So I think that it's really fascinating because from a ethics model perspective, you could argue that all three elements are in play and in conflict, right? Having rules that's conflicting with the utilitarian, and so then you have the virtuous can maybe set, but then they're not exactly in sync, so that's creating friction there right now as well.
Right. It's one of the things that comes to mind for me, and I'll throw it up on our screen. In my educational background, when I was taught about making ethical decisions, one of the mindsets that really stuck with me all my life, it's one of the few things I can remember all the way back from high school. It's like, yep, that was a good one. I'm really glad that tucked away. But to your point, I don't know how helpful it really is, but it gives us some language to tear apart an ethical decision. Really quickly, there's an issue, right? Is killing someone right or wrong? Oh, well, it's wrong. Okay. There are circumstances. Are there some circumstances that might undo the wrongness? Well, yeah, and we could list some different things. What about the options? What options do you have in order to change the situation? Because maybe under certain circumstances there are different options, and so do I have choices that I could make? And then, of course, consequences. Regardless of what I'm doing, there's going to be some sort of outcome. The kind that we think about with these classic hypothetical philosophical questions. If you could go back and kill Hitler, would you? It's like, oh, no, that's wrong. Well, but if you don't do it, then we know what the consequences are, and that's hard, right? So when I hear you talk about different, three different mindsets of what we are trying to do. It's interesting because you and I could agree on the issue, the circumstances, the options, the consequences, and still think, yep, Sam Altman was right to do this. Why? Well, because, what we need for our defense and the government, it's like they know about things that are not public, that we don't know about. We've got to put it into their hands. And then you could argue that Dario was correct in saying, well, no, it's our duty now at this point to put the brakes on something until we can figure out what that future looks like and what those circumstances might be and what options we would have, et cetera. So to your point, it's not a math equation. We can always come up with a different answer. Let's throw in some other things, though, Jeff, that you and I were talking about before we hit the record button. Right now in our society, we are influenced by various factors. What I was talking about was, gosh, we've got more people in a contractual relationship with an employer, quote unquote employer. Think Uber driver. Think someone like myself, where I'm self employed, but I have multiple clients. I don't have that formal employee employer relationship. And then you were talking, and I'll let you sort of cue this up, but you were saying, what about our circumstances for what's being modeled in terms of what form of leadership, authoritarian or demanding? How does the current, I don't even know what the right word is, the current events, our current perception of where we are, speed of technology, the way leaders are being sort of defined in a sort of a traditional masculine do as I say type approach that we're seeing popularized in a lot of media. How does that factor in to me in terms of, gosh, I have an ethical decision? What's the right way to go?
Yeah. Well, I think it can factor in two ways. So one is role modeling, right? It's very powerful. So if we take our current environment, and there is evidence out there that when you have someone like the president of the United States who's very comfortable with breaking norms and breaking certain rules, that makes it okay in the minds of other people to do the same thing. So
Yeah.
we do start to see other corporate leaders feeling like they don't have to be as confined as they once were, but they can really just kind of do what they feel is best and not really, be thinking always of maybe about everyone's true concern or whatever that might be. I don't want to get overly political, but that's just, let's just say, how the president role models something does impact the way leaders and other people, even employees in the organization, then think how they can act, right? So
Well,
there's
and if I can give you a quickly, it works on both sides of the political spectrum. We
right,
have
right,
folks who broke into the Capitol because they thought that something was not right. We have folks that are interfering with, you know, in, ICE in essence, right? So we have people who are saying, no, it's my job to interfere. So on both ends, we're both saying rule breaking under certain circumstances is correct. It's the
correct,
right thing
right,
to do.
right. And I'm not, yeah, exactly. So I think that the role model element. So are we what people are getting guidance to do? And then the other side of it is if we are sort of taking this more do as I say kind of action,
Yeah.
then we're basically telling people not to be thinking for themselves. And so you're not going to have that virtuous person. You're not going to have the person that's really evaluating the good and the bad of the situation. You're just going to end up with people that are looking for that rule, that standard, that commandment, and that can lead to other problems and situations. So I think it's become a tie and a conflict between those two elements.
Yeah, and so and this was something else that you and I talked about This is a book that's used in business ethics. Are you okay over there, Jeff?
Yeah, I'm fine. It's all this ethics. It's just clouding up my lungs. But
I understand. Yeah. Well, you're not used to dealing with, ethical and anyway. This book, Giving Voice to Values, has been used in business schools. It's been used in leadership development programs talking about ethics. And it's interesting, Jeff, because what Mary Gentile is talking about is she's saying you have to prepare not if, but when there's an ethical conflict. When you feel that something is wrong, there should be sort of a de facto set of behaviors. I can speak up. I have power. I've done it in the past, and I am ready to actually take action here. And I can find someone who's an ally within my organization or working environment, and now we have power to stop something. But you only would come to that conclusion, to your point, if you feel like you are supposed to put the brakes on. If I am given a command to do something that's illegal or immoral, am I morally or legally obliged to not follow through on that command, to basically not obey authority?
Well, speaking of putting the brakes on, we are past our 15 minutes. So we will have to pick up that conversation as we come back. Maybe next week we'll pick up from here.
Was it okay though that we went long? Like, was it ethically okay?
It depends on the circumstances.
All right. Well, we'll debate that as we leave. Happy Friday, everyone.
Happy Friday. Thank you.